You are listening to Vitruvian Man with Jesse and Josh.
Welcome back to the show. Josh, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you doing?
Good. Yesterday was Father's Day.
Oh, yeah. Happy Father's Day, man.
We talk about fathers and men and all kinds of stuff. And obviously, one of the goals of this podcast is decide what does it mean to be a man, a good man, not just, right, a stereotypical stupid man.
Yep.
I would say this is what it means to be a good man. I'm showing Josh a picture of my father-in-law. So of all the archetypes I've ever known, either both in entertainment or people I've known personally, this is the guy I worship. So like we talked about, we love Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee, and there's these men like Christopher Hitchens that we really admire. And if I had one guy that really taught me what, loyalty and respect and kindness, this is the guy. So just a shout out to my father-in-law, Irby, just the best.
Awesome.
So,
well, on that note, if we're going to be doing shout outs to the men in our life, I'll have to say Ron, my stepdad, or my dad. He really is just my dad.
Yeah.
He's totally taught me what it's like to be an honorable man. Him and all of his homies, they really.
So he had a good group of friends.
Good group of friends. They cared about each other. They always hung out. They started doing the men's bonding getaways back in the.
Did they do little drum circles?
They were making fun of those bastards. They'd go out and smoke weed and drink booze and fucking hit the golf clubs around.
So they would call it. They would basically. It was a pretend like Robert Bly.
Exactly.
Campfire thing.
Men's bonding.
Nice.
Yeah, every year they've been doing shit. They've been doing that for fucking like 35 years or something like
nice.
that. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, Ron's a good guy.
Right, shout out to the good guys in the world. All right, so we have an interesting topic today. Obviously, the Supreme Court just ruled, well, at least temporarily, in favor for an abortion pill.
So I'm going to clarify that.
Yes.
Because all they ruled is that the plaintiffs didn't have standing. They had no reason to bring that lawsuit. There's currently 5 states claiming that they have standing, waiting to bring that same lawsuit. So this is purely a ruling on standing. This is not a ruling on that of the availability of that drug.
So I think I assumed it was good, but what you're saying is it's temporary.
It's not. It's putting it off. It's kicking the can down until next year, until after the election.
Right. So obviously, I think people saw that and they were like, "Oh, finally, a good decision was made by the court." But basically, you're saying it's inevitable.
It's there. The decision hasn't been made.
Right. So the Supreme Court obviously has a varied and colorful history. This country, ever since the 1800s. I guess I don't think the Supreme Court goes back to the founding of the country, right? Doesn't that go later, like the 1800s?
Well, they established it. I don't know what it looked like compared to how it did today, but that's one of the 3 branches.
Okay. The worst decisions, I was doing some research on the worst decisions of the Supreme Court, and the oldest one was, I think, mid 1800s. So maybe they just weren't bad decisions before that. So
what was the decision in the mid 1800s?
The bad. Well, there's 3 or 4. Do you want to get into that now?
Well, let's throw it down. Did it have?
Yeah. I got it right here. So real quick here. These are obviously, we're talking about gender and stuff like that, but things that affect people obviously affect everybody, right? So some of these terrible decisions are relevant to all people. Let me get here. So, for example, they listed Dred Scott versus Sanford.
Obviously, right.
Which held that African Americans, whether free men or slaves, could not be considered American citizens.
Yeah.
That's a disaster. Obviously, that's
Fucking
1857. Buck versus Bell. The court upheld the forced sterilization of those with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah,
so eugenics was a thing, right? Oliver Wendell Holmes ruled that society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind, and it ended the opinion by declaring that 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. My disabled friend reminded me that when you say imbecile, moron, and an idiot, those used to be terms for strata of lower IQ in people.
Right. Those meant something specific.
Right.
Yeah.
So he reminded me that they can be offensive, and I get that, but it can't help but make me think of the Trump voters who are, some of them at least, imbeciles, morons, and idiots. So just kind of an interesting parallel between those two. Just real quick. Anyway, those are the older, like, terrible decisions. That Buck versus Bell was 1927.
And that was before even like women's rights or anything like that was even like a fucking glimmer. Right? They didn't even fucking think about that shit. They were still dealing with like establishing the state and the parameters of having a state.
Yeah, and although there are a few terrible decisions we probably can't get out of the room without talking about Korematsu versus United States, where the Supreme Court upheld the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, which was a disaster and awful. And, I'm not sure they ever caught a spy with that nonsense. No. So they just really took away people's property and rights.
All those people were they wanted to be we
Yes. So
that shit was fucking ridiculous.
Stone cold racism, basically.
Yeah, so straight up.
So we got a lot to talk about today. We were going to talk about both. I mean, I think let's go into the worst decisions by the court. Of course, I ended up finding some really good ones that we should talk about too.
I think we should because I mean, laying the groundwork, I think is a good idea. Right.
How do you want to get started? Do you want to like go into your list of? Okay, I got some interesting notes here.
So the research that I did, I kind of went through the decisions that I found. I went through the ACLU thing, and I went through a couple other listings of decisions that affected women in different ways. But my research led me somewhere else.
So where did it lead you?
Well, we'll get there. I want to hear your list of stuff, and then we'll kind of go. We'll branch out from there.
Right.
Is that good?
Absolutely. Okay. I've got worst decisions of the Trump era. Do you want to start with that?
Well, let's kind of start at the beginning.
Okay.
Because like I think one of the first civil rights decisions. So Brown v. Board of Education, 1954. I think that is like kind of the beginning of the decisions that really affected people. And so that you start talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and all those things. And then women's rights start coming after that. So I think that kind of lays the groundwork for a progressive interpretation of the Constitution, right?
And that's what the segregation ruling. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one that basically opened up schools to everybody.
And I think Thurgood Marshall would have already been on the Supreme Court by then, by the 50s, right?
I can't remember, but I think so. I can't remember for sure.
Just a little factoid is that do you remember that Clarence Thomas replaced Thurgood Marshall? I mean, that really is like Kid Rock replacing Mark Twain as an author.
God damn.
Like of all the worst replacements in history, that could be the very top.
You ever see the Boondocks, the show?
A little bit, yeah.
He is essentially fucking Justice Ruckus.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't remember the show
Uncle
enough to
Ruckus?
remember.
No. Oh my fucking God. He's like...
Is he just an awful person in that show, or remind me?
He's an awful person.
Okay.
I don't want to get it. Okay. I don't want to... We should sit down and watch an episode with Justice.
Can do. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Justice Ruckus.
So yeah, I mean, I guess having not studied these since college, I was pretty pleased to read the decades of the 70s, 80s, and 90s because boy, are there a lot of great decisions.
The 70s, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think were peak progressive Supreme Court.
But I mean, the bizarre thing is even in the 90s and the 2000s, there were some excellent decisions.
There were.
Even in a court that was already leaning super right wing, they actually had some positive decisions. Some bad ones like Hobby Lobby, that was a fucking disaster.
Well, Citizens United.
I mean, Jesus. And it's the funny that it's like, I mean, Citizens United, like abortion, obviously, is a gigantic issue in this country. It really is, and the fact that they could overturn it is terrifying. But Citizens United could still be one of the worst decisions of all time. As far as its implications for people in this country, it's just an unmitigated disaster.
I remember when that happened, I was just like, that decision is the end of the American experience.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. That's
we saw that and we're like, oh God.
Yeah.
Corporations are people, right?
Money is free speech. That's the fucking problem.
Yeah, and I was discussing this with my son the other day because he's a good in that he tries to take the other side of an argument. He's always trying to see the other side, which I appreciate.
Sure.
That I'm very strident and making declarations, the Republican Party is evil. But like I like that he's constantly thinking about the other side and trying to empathize, which I think is a good quality. Mm-hmm. But what I said to him was, it's not that Republicans are evil. It's that these people call themselves conservatives, and they are not conservatives.
They are fucking radicals.
And conservative icons like Barry Goldwater, I think, would be horrified to see these people that call themselves conservatives. Conservatism is a different thing than radicalism and fascism. It's just not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
You know,
and like when you talk about conservative social values, right? Fine, if you want to have that opinion, but don't fucking force it on everybody else. Like that's the fucking problem I see. Fiscal conservatism, military conservatism, both those things I can kind of get behind, right? But none of the fucking the right at this point even thinks those things.
Right.
It's this pseudo fucking. Oh God, I'm getting heated. Fucking.
Well, and so that's the thing. If you go back to true conservatism,
right.
Let's say Reagan and Goldwater,
Reagan,
those people were for the separation of church and state. Reagan was for the separation of church and state. Believe it or not, I'm sorry you don't want to hear that.
I don't believe it.
Apparently that's what I read.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that even people you would vehemently dislike knew that it was a good idea to separate church and state. Evangelicals in 1776, evangelicals led the charge for separation of church and state because they and their family members had been beaten and murdered for practicing religion in Europe.
Right.
So evangelicals were at the forefront of the separation of church
and that's why it was written into the Constitution. I mean,
right.
It was all about that. And I believe that before Reagan, there was absolutely a bunch of people bunch of conservatives that were actually for the separation of church and state. Everything I've read about Reagan, I don't care what fucking people say about him. That motherfucker.
You don't believe it?
I don't believe it.
Okay. I'm willing to believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I guess screw Reagan because he sucks.
Yeah, he's a bastard.
Awful, mean person.
Piece of shit.
I guess I only meant to say that there was a time where conservatives would bristle at the thought.
And I agree with that.
Church would have anything to do with
totally
policy.
Agree with that. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. So we got some notes here. Who's starting? You want to start first?
I want you to go because mine ends up coming into the picture a little bit later.
Well,
although it's based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from those horrible decisions that I mentioned in the 1800s, I did start in the 70s with good decisions, though. You want to talk about some of the good ones that they made, or
work your way through.
Okay, all right. So let me find my spot here.
I mean, the first one that they have listed, that the Griswold v. Connecticut, 1965.
Yeah, the ACLU files an amicus brief in this historic case in which the court holds that the Constitution guarantees a right to privacy that encompasses the right to individuals to make decisions about intimate personal matters. So what we're talking about is birth control.
Birth control.
Huge decision.
That's gigantic.
Especially for women, obviously. I mean, right, if you're a woman who's in a marriage and it's hard to get out of it, I mean, the idea that you can control your own agency, which is not get pregnant if you don't want to, is a big thing. So, and it's the ACL is all over some of these cases, and I think people sometimes the other day on Facebook or something, someone had said, the ACLU, I don't like the ACLU. They support Nazis' right to march. Yes, they support free speech. That's what they do.
That's what.
Yeah, and if you remember, it was at one point. I can't remember. I guess it was the guy that ran against Reagan said, "I'm a card-carrying member of the ACLU," and he got fucking destroyed for saying that. Do you remember that? So it was the guy in the tank. It was one of the ineffective Democrats that ran against Reagan. But I believe that was the guy that said, "I'm a card-carrying member of the ACLU," got killed, and it's like, oh, by the way, I am totally, me, Jesse, a card-carrying member of the ACLU. I am proud to be a card-carrying member of the ACLU. The ACLU stands up for rights, and they are winning court battles every single year that protect our rights. So God bless the ACLU. Yeah. So there's Griswold. There's also Phillips versus Martin Marietta, which is the ACLU filed a brief that said the court rules that employer violates Title IX when it refuses to hire women with young children while hiring men who are similarly situated, basically.
Title VII.
Oh, what did I say? 9. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Because
that's right. Title VII. Yeah, I read that Roman numeral wrong. Good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, civil rights, because that's from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's Frontero versus Richardson, this is the first case argued before Supreme Court Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No, did she actually argued that one?
It says here Sorry, give me a second here. I wrote that it's a fact about that one. I don't remember if she wrote the decision or not. So
what year is this?
That's 1973.
Okay.
That's where they grant male members of the uniformed forces housing and benefits for their wives, but required female members to demonstrate their actual dependency of their husbands. Okay, so four justices conclude that the laws differentiating by sex were inherently suspect and subject to strict judicial scrutiny.
And so that was the first one that she argued.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, so that was because I mean she's all over this.
Yeah.
And like she did a lot.
She did. Davis versus Washington was 2006. That was about domestic abuse. That was a huge one because it meant that women who made a statement about their abusive husband at the crime scene would not have to return to make that statement later on. So obviously, many women who are abused are afraid. They might say something at the spur of the moment, but when it comes time to stand up in court, they're terrified. And of course, their husbands might have already threatened them physically and stuff like that. So this meant you could take that and admit it to evidence without having to repeat it in court, basically.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah. So that was a big one for survivors of abuse.
Yeah.
Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. That's, oh boy. Now
we're moving into the bad ones, right?
So, I mean, a public company, a company that is for profit, argued they had religious rights. That's what this comes down to.
Well, because it wasn't just about, it was about being a privately held company.
Right.
That was the thing. If it wasn't publicly traded and it was a privately held company, they didn't have to do shit. They could do whatever they fucking wanted.
So they were privately held, but it's a for-profit company, though.
Right. So being a for-profit and being privately held they're not exclusive.
Well, basically, the ACLU authors a brief that says for-profit business enterprise cannot raise religious objections to avoid compliance with a law designed to further women's health.
Right.
This decision's a disaster.
And it's so weird. I mean, really, it is a very strange thing to delineate it between privately held and publicly traded.
Right.
Like, why does that even make a fucking difference?
Well, I mean, a church would say, right, we have a right to deny you an abortion, right? So a church would say, we don't have an abortion doctor on staff. You can't come in here and get an abortion. That violates our religious freedom. Okay, sure. Absolutely. But I mean, Hobby Lobby doesn't have to give health insurance. They don't have to give contraception to women.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, why is there a difference between a privately held and a publicly traded company?
If it's for profit, what's it got to do with religion?
Even if it's not for profit, if you're a fucking business, you should and you have to provide health care. You have to provide fucking health care.
I'm pretty sure Hobby Lobby, by the way, allowed Viagra. So I think I'm saying that right.
Of course they did.
So the men could get Viagra, but the women couldn't get contraception.
What a fucking...
It's insane.
Oh, God.
There's Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstadt. Did you have that one on your list there?
What year is this?
Oh, this is 2016. They authored a brief urging the court to strike down 2 Texas abortion restrictions, basically. So the first restriction required physicians who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at the local hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So this I think I would say more abortion freedom.
Well,
am I saying that right? Because the court invalidated both restrictions, holding that they place an undue burden on the right to obtain an abortion.
So that actually did work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because, I mean, that's getting to the point where it's getting too close to now.
Yeah. So basically the mid-2006, 2010, 2015, that's where the decisions start to get awful.
Well, there were some pretty bad decisions.
Oh, sure.
Also, because like the one that 1974, Geduldig. Let me see it. Let me get it on here. I'm sorry.
Oh, Geduldig. Oh, yeah, I know that guy.
Geduldig v. Aiello. On behalf of the Women's Rights Project, Ginsburg co-authors an amicus brief that argues that laws discriminating on the basis of pregnancy make sex-based distinctions and should be evaluated under heightened scrutiny.
Right.
The court holds that a disability insurance program that denies benefits for disabilities resulting from pregnancy does not violate the Equal Protection Clause. So it does not involve discrimination on the basis of sex, but between pregnant and not pregnant people. So that was the beginning of them kind of chipping away at women's rights right there. That was one of my bad ones.
Yeah.
The other one, 1989, Webster v. Reproductive Health Services. Uh-huh. So they uphold restrictions on abortion, and that I think that's kind of like the beginning of the states' rights, kind of where they're veering to what they're doing now, saying it's up to the states to decide this stuff, or at least that's the claim, which is bullshit because they're fucking
to parse that out, right?
Yeah.
So Supreme Court, as far as I understand it, does not like to overturn state precedents. Right, so they do not want to interfere in states' rights when it comes to their.
Well, sometimes.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I'm saying classically, I think if this was being taught at Harvard Law, right, they would say that ideally the Supreme Court is not interfering with states' rights. How does that describe these 25 or 30 horrible decisions? Right, I mean they've got these decisions on here that. You'll read some of them. It's like this 1,000% violates states' rights. Like this is so. Basically, it's just convenience. I mean, look, like, is it convenient for you to cite states' rights as a precedent here?
Any of the Second Amendment fucking decisions at this point.
Oh, the gun lobby ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the shit that all those decisions. Like, if a state can't pass a law restricting the use of firearms, what the fuck are you talking about? States' rights? Fuck you. It's fucking bullshit.
And I mean, the funny thing about states' rights, too, is there are laws in the books in several states against sodomy still.
Right.
So, and sodomy is not necessarily sex between two men. Sodomy is all non-reproductive sex.
No. Yeah.
So,
right.
And
blowjobs. Out.
Laws get way weirder than that. There are laws like in Tennessee about owning a donkey. I mean, states and local governments have ridiculous laws. Some states have great rights, and they end up being precedents for important civil rights. Some states have punitive racist laws, and they should be overturned. So it's just so funny. This, great, states' rights are important, but what if the law sucks? No, I don't agree with that. Right? If the law is to me fundamentally anti-civil rights, fuck it.
Right.
Right. What's that got to do with anything? Who cares?
I mean, we also know the states' rights, like. The only reason that's like as big a thing as it is because they decided to placate the fucking South,
right,
to get them to come back,
right. So all their segregation rules could still be in place.
Still fucking stand,
yeah.
And fucking, it's just
it
really does all come back to like fucking racist sexism.
Do you know this? Okay, this is a little bit off the track, but I am the farthest thing from a civil rights expert. In fact, as little as I know about Israel-Palestine, that's how little I know about the Civil War. A friend of mine who's definitely a reader and a scholar, he was in the Special Forces of Vietnam, he had read that by not executing the generals of the South, that seeded the KKK.
For sure.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like apparently that decision basically formed the power structure of the Ku Klux Klan.
I mean, have you ever read the Southern Constitution?
No. Have you?
I've read chunks of it.
Okay, and?
It's not good. It's not good. All these people that say it's about states' rights and bullshit. Fuck that. There's
about slavery.
It absolutely fucking verbally, like it's fucking there in writing. Right? Basically, like there's definitely some. It's almost a clone.
Yeah.
And then they put a little more emphasis on states' rights, obviously.
Right. Sure.
But the real kicker is that you can't pass a law that makes it illegal for a white person to own a black person. And they're very, very clear about it being black people. They're not fucking around.
So it's in the Constitution.
It's in the fucking Southern Constitution.
The right to own a black person.
Yes.
Wow.
And you can't pass a law to fucking get rid of it.
Wow. So that's what I think about states' rights.
I mean, that kind of sums it all up for me.
Yeah.
Fucking
would you love Dukes of Hazzard when you were a kid?
Yeah.
I'm bringing that up because the Dukes of Hazzard had a giant Confederate flag on their car. Now, to our credit as kids, we didn't fucking know. No. But I mean, back then, I don't think it was really in the cultural consciousness that that the way that flag is inextricably tied to racism and slavery.
Definitely not. It was a representation of the South,
Right.
but it wasn't the South.
I took a Zoom meeting once for a fantasy football league, and we do drafting online, right? So it's 12 me and a Zoom with 11 other people doing a draft, and one of the guy had a fucking Confederate flag hanging behind him. And I know and like a lot of the people in that league, and I'm like chatting with them on the side, like, what the fuck is going on here? This guy, I mean, it's so tone deaf to have a Confederate flag hanging on your wall, and you live in Santa Rosa. You don't live in Tennessee.
Dude, well, Santa Rosa was with the South, dude.
Oh, Santa Rosa's got a long storied history of racism.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Luther Burbank, not a good guy, especially if you're Chinese. Do you know about that? Yeah. Luther Burbank, a eugenicist who basically was all for forcing the Chinese people out of Sonoma County. So, an awful person.
Pretty roses, though.
Okay, back on topic here.
Yeah, sorry.
How dare you, sir, stray from the topic here. All right, I have lots of decisions still to talk about here. We got Brett Kavanaugh. We got to talk about Clarence Thomas. Oh, my God, Clarence Thomas. I've got the worst decisions post-Trump. Do you want to hear some of those?
Sure. Let me. I want to go over a couple of good ones.
Let's do it.
Just to do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Reed versus Reed, 1971. Treating men and women differently when there's no justifiable or pertinent reason to do so violates the 14th Amendment.
Was this in employment, for example?
This was for employment, yes. So
I know that, for example, like women were forced out of like law enforcement because of height and weight requirements.
Yeah.
So is that related to this one?
I don't remember if that's... So this is 1971. Let's see.
It's okay. I was just curious because I had read one of the decisions that did directly affect measurables of employees that was basically meant to be discriminatory.
So that wasn't that one.
Okay.
But that one, and then, I mean, I have to say, hiring a female screw for an all-male prison might be a little rough.
Let's define screw for the people that haven't been in prison.
Yeah, nobody's been in lockdown. The prison guards.
And you said hiring a single female in a all-male scary prison.
Hiring a female as a security guard, as a prison guard. I can see there being a very valid reason for not hiring a woman in that situation.
The one thing I would rebut that if I was a female prison guard is I would say all prison guards' lives are in danger.
Absolutely.
All the time.
But
essentially that the men are just as much in danger as the women. So why shouldn't a woman do that?
I don't agree with that. I think that a woman is in more danger. And on top of that, that puts other people around her in danger.
Okay.
And this is
a friend of mine. His mom was a prison guard. She probably wouldn't agree.
Was she in an all-male
that I don't
lockdown?
That I don't know.
Because I'm not saying minimum security or anything like that, or medium security or mixed prison. Nothing around that, but just the very specific situation.
Sure,
I can see them discriminating,
right,
and it being a reasonable thing. But I also think that was addressed in that decision.
So that was a good decision. I think you have some more too.
Yeah. So I've got. Let's see. What is it? Meritor Savings v. Vinson, 1986. And basically that decision was that sexual harassment leads to a hostile work environment. And so it made it so that sexual harassment was grounds for a lawsuit.
So basically it's illegal to commit sexual harassment.
Yes, it made it because it creates a hostile work environment.
Right.
And then there was an odd one. I thought this was a very strange thing. Pittsburgh Press Company versus the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations, 1973. So it made it unlawful to specify gender criteria in most job advertising. So the Pittsburgh Press, the paper, had 3 listings: men, women, and men and women. And
so it was basically saying women cannot apply for this job. For example.
Women, yeah, and I mean that was just because of the listing, but basically it was put in there by the employer. So I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I saw that one too. That was a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Can't have gendered advertising, basically. Gender specific
for jobs.
advertising. Right.
Yeah. So those are the ones that I had that I thought were good. Now hit me with the bad ones.
There's a few bad ones. Yeah. Well, let's do this. This is the word. Oh, go ahead.
Let's
Sorry.
get the elephant out of the room here.
Yeah.
1973, Roe versus Wade.
Dude, fist bump.
Hella.
What a huge decision.
What a fucking, just a monster decision. And just screwed by these fucking religious nut jobs that are in there now.
It is kind of bizarre when you consider that in 1973, the court ruled in a decision that affected women for potentially thousands of years, right? If that decision had stayed place, we're talking about one of the most important decisions in our country's history.
Absolutely.
And it is interesting to me now that there's any reason to think that that was an invalid decision, right? The court, and this is the thing about when the Supreme Court is working well, it does not like to shoot down precedent. When the Supreme Court is working like it should,
So
precedent should mean something.
So
and
that's-
your own fucking court's decision is a precedent.
So that is what I will be addressing with all this led me.
Okay, but not yet.
Not yet.
You don't want to let the
Not
cat
yet.
out of the bag yet.
I want you to
Okay.
tell me some good stuff. Tell
I'm
me some
getting
bad
to
stuff.
think about it. Well, I do have worse decisions in the Trump era.
Okay.
So these are, and of course, Trump has appointed judges.
Far too fucking many.
I'm talking about this here. For example, there's Whole Woman's Health versus Jackson. This isn't
Yeah.
just one of the worst Supreme Court decisions of the post-Trump era. It's one of the worst of all time. If taken seriously, its reasoning would allow any state to neutralize any constitutional right. Because it was decided months before the court overruled Roe v. Wade, a Texas law that relied on a very unusual mechanism to ban nearly all abortions in that state. I could go on and on. This is just a disaster. It's allowing states to overturn these rulings is insane.
So it's giving states' rights in a place where states' rights have no business.
Right. Even if it's had unlimited resources, it's unlikely to do much at all to enforce these laws during the Republican administrations. Right. So like they could have like law enforcement enforce some of these things, but it would be impossible. Sorry, that's so complicated. It's kind of a word salad. But at any rate, yeah. So I lost my train of thought there a little bit on that one. But there's Trump versus United States, the Eileen Cannon special master debacle. So Eileen Cannon has become a household name among the set that closely follows the many civil and criminal legal proceedings against Trump.
These people are not serious people.
No.
They really, like,
They
they're
are not.
fucking mutton heads.
No. Cannon is a Trump appointee presiding over his criminal trial for deliberately retaining classified documents. She has consistently handed down rulings that suggest she also seems to think she's a member of the former president's defense team. Like, she has so been partisan towards Trump. It's amazing that she hasn't recused herself or been disbarred.
It's amazing she hasn't been disbarred.
Yeah, it's
Like, she is so fucking stupid.
Not
It
a
is
serious person.
Astounding.
yeah, exactly.
It's astounding.
Right.
Like, how the fuck? Why didn't I go to law school? These people are dumb as shit, and they fucking got
Yeah.
through it.
I know.
Like, fucking, like, dumb as shit.
Well, and there is an age requirement to hold office. Why isn't there an IQ requirement? Now, I'm sorry to say that.
No, but it's true.
Here's what I'm going to say. Someone that is uneducated obviously isn't purely evil. That's nothing to do with that. If you were my father-in-law, who I mentioned earlier, did not go to school. The most kindest, decent person that ever lived. So again, not being educated or being ignorant of something is not innately evil. It's being gleefully, cheerfully, hatefully ignorant that bothers me. And if you can't understand science of global warming and women's reproductive health, why are you on these science committees?
Yeah.
Right? They've got idiots on these science committees that don't understand the science that they're ruling on.
No, they have no fucking concept of what the studies mean, what consensus is.
Right.
Fucking son of a bitch. And let me just say, this is kind of an aside here,
Right.
but as far as like women's rights and the idea of abortion, I don't think men should have a fucking goddamn thing to say. can offer their opinion if they're fucking asked. Otherwise, shut the fuck up and let the woman do what she wants to do.
Right.
It's her fucking body. Fuck you. I like all these fucking old white motherfuckers making these decisions that impact millions of women of all shades.
Yeah.
What the fuck kind of bullshit is that? What kind of, and I will get to it, but it's absolutely fucking horrific.
It's insane.
You can have an opinion. You have no say.
Yeah, I don't think it was Camille Paglia said it, but someone did say if men could get an abortion, it would be a sacrament.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Right, they'd have abortion parties and they would have beer and, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's all about controlling women.
It is, yeah.
You know, my son likes to argue their side. He would say, a man has no decision in an abortion? Well, ideally, if a man and a woman accidentally have a child or, you know, a pregnancy, ideally, she's going to talk to him about it and say, I can't do this. I can't afford this. But what if he's abusive? Right. There's mitigating circumstances. You know, I understand why some of these things exist, but yes, there are things that are women's decisions, and I'm sorry, let them make the decision. So
you can have an opinion,
right,
and you can offer it up if she asks. Otherwise, shut the fuck up and support her.
Absolutely.
It's your fucking fault.
Well, and that's not, you know, condoms are, they say it's something like 95% effective. Well, that 5% is the morons that did it wrong.
Right.
Condoms are 100% effective.
Yeah,
if you do a condom right, you can't mess it up.
Yeah.
You know, so just do birth control right, and this will never be a problem.
It's not a fucking
And that's
problem.
the thing about Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood has always been about prevention of pregnancy.
Right.
That they would much rather hand out birth control and have women be healthy and, you know, not be getting, you know, uterine cancer. That's the whole point of is to avoid abortions.
Yeah.
And if they were actually allowed to do their job, we'd be avoiding a lot more abortions. So another terrible decision, which was Doe versus Mickelson, the anti-free speech wing of the federal judiciary lashes out against the right to protest. Essentially, the Fifth Circuit is a recurring villain in any saga about the post-Trump judiciary, but nominated by Trump appointees and other MAGA allies, this court, which oversees all federal cases arising in Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, is a major reason why judges like this thrive in these three states. Far-right trial judges in the Fifth Circuit receive very little adult supervision unless their decisions are renewed by the justices. And more moderate trial judges in the Fifth Circuit often have their decisions torn apart by partisan goons. So, horrible decision.
It's good to know that's the Fifth. I know that there's different circuits, but that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Real quick, here's another one. This is New York State Rifle versus Bruin. This is the court's completely unworkable Second Amendment decision. This gets really complicated. But essentially, many of the court's Republican appointees claim to be originalists, meaning that they believe that the Constitution must be interpreted as it was originally understood when it was drafted. But if these justices actually intended to discredit originalism as a method of judging, they would have written a decision much like New York State versus Rifle and Pistol Association. For virtually any gun law to survive a Second Amendment challenge, the government must demonstrate that the regulation is consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Oh boy, that's not complicated at all.
You're hitting my points here. This is the problem, is the originalists.
All right, so those are my worst decisions in the Trump era.
Yeah.
I got other notes, but did you want to bring your surprise out yet, or you want to wait a little bit?
This is it.
Okay.
I mean, this is a good segue because the real problem started. So in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, the Federalist Society came about. And the Federalist Society is a group of people that fucking foster, train, mentor all these originalist assholes. And you can trace this back to 1954 Brown versus Board of Education.
Really?
That was kind of the catalyst that got these people together. And they said, how can we prevent these kinds of decisions, right? Progressive, like, you know, civil rights, women's rights.
So Brown versus Board of Education happens
in 1954.
And a gaggle of assholes, a small, important, powerful gaggle of assholes got together and said, how do we stop this next time?
How do we make this go away?
And that's the Federalist Papers.
And that's the beginning of, the Federalist Papers were written in the, I think, 1800s. But the Federalist Society is the group that promotes the whole concept of originalism, which is horseshit.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we've always been taught that the Constitution is a living document.
Right.
To interpret it as it was written in 1776 is horseshit. That's
Right. Well,
fucking bullshit.
just think about assault rifles, right? Could the founding fathers have conceived assault rifles? Absolutely not.
No.
There's no universe they could have understood how bad our weapons would get.
No, and well, the thing about the Originalist Society is that they take that Second Amendment, and because the Second Amendment, as it's written, is completely inapplicable to today's America. There is no need for a militia because there's a standing army.
Right.
There wasn't a standing army then. They wanted all people to be armed.
Essentially,
because
if there was a threat,
if there
to
was a
our
fucking
freedom,
threat, if
yeah.
the fucking Brits came, or
Right.
if the French came, or whoever, right? They wanted a fucking force, a fighting force. There's no need for a fucking militia. The
Right.
Second Amendment is out the fucking door unless you have this originalist interpretation. And so the NRA totally has funded the fucking Federalist Society, and a huge part of the originalists, as you said earlier to me, they're fucking like the worst type of Christian. Like I have friends that are Christian, and even though like it's not my bag, I get it, and they act like real Christians. They believe in like the real Jesus. They fucking help people out. They're welcoming. They're
good
all
people.
They're
They're not these
right.
assholes that we talk about.
But there's this fucking strain of Christianity, especially in America, that is just fucking awful, domineering, and they don't want religious freedom. They want religious superiority. And the Federalist Society and the Originalists, I think, are instituting an American version of Sharia. They are putting
meaning punitive
a
religious,
theocracy.
Laws. Basically.
Theocracy, a fucking nation ruled by one religion's idea of how things are.
Right.
It's turning into a fucking nightmare. Right. And Scalia, that pile of fucking dog shit, he was the first originalist on the court.
So he was an originalist.
Yes.
He was part of the. Was he part of the Federalist Society or not?
Yes, he came from the Federalist Society. Basically everybody on there now, except for the three.
So would that have been like in the 60s or 70s?
This would have been in the 70s when it started, but
so
it really got steamroll in the 80s.
But a lot of the key, like kind of Republican players that we know from the 70s and 80s would have been part of that society.
All the people that were
like Newt
young.
Gingrich. I mean, like who are we talking about here?
He
maybe too young for that.
He would have been too old for that.
Oh, what about Mitch McConnell?
Too old. We're talking John Roberts. We're talking fucking Kavanaugh. We're talking like all these guys are fucking originalists. These guys are fucking part of the Federalist Society.
Okay.
Yeah, even fucking Amy fucking Comey Barrett
is an originalist. Okay.
And they're all super fucking religious, obviously. Alito, piece of shit. They're all flying flags.
Right.
Fucking Mike Johnson.
Right.
All these people are part of that fucking thing.
And so would Scalia be the diseased daddy of all these assholes?
He would have been at the vanguard of getting in a position of real power.
Right.
And being part of that group.
Okay.
And they're all fucking dominionists. You know what I mean? Like
What's a dominionist?
So a dominionist is a branch of Christianity that believes that they need to have dominion over the country. Like they
that
want.
Sounds like an oligarchy to me.
It's a theocracy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. It's straight.
Well, it sounds like
theocracy.
a ruler, right? An irreplaceable ruler.
Well, no. I mean, you can put whoever you want in there as long as they're fucking.
As long as the law of the land is
religious.
Religious.
It's a theocracy. I mean, this is no different than fucking Iran.
Right.
I mean, that might be a touch hyperbolic, a touch, but I mean, that's their end game. That is their end game.
Right.
That's what they want. They want dominion over the population, and they want them to be religious, and so they're looking to take away women's rights. They're looking at going after the gays. They're looking at going after everybody because it doesn't jibe with their fucking idea of what their religion is. It's pure theocracy, and I don't want to get all fucking crazy.
Pretty ironic that an originalist would cite, let's say, the founding of this country as the way this country should be, when there were several atheists that were our founding fathers.
They don't believe that.
And even the religious people that signed the Constitution were adamantly for the separation of church and state.
They don't believe that.
They think it's fake.
They think it's fake news. Yeah.
So facts are fake, right?
Well, the facts are different. Like they believe that they were fucking God-fearing Christian men.
I love it. I love how you say, this is what's so sick about this. You said they believe. Who gives a flying fuck what they believe? We've got the words of our founding fathers that ardently argue for the separation of church and state.
But the way that they interpret that, it's different, and I can't.
So in other words, they're not saying they didn't say it. They're saying it's not how you're interpreting it.
We are interpreting it as it was originally intended. Right? That's the originalist thing. Is they're looking at this document.
So they're reading the subtext of what they were saying.
Right. But if somehow that doesn't jibe with them, they're all about the living document. Right? It doesn't fucking matter. That's the thing. Is it's completely disingenuous. They're not serious people. They have an agenda, and they're cramming everything into that agenda. Yeah. It's a fucked up situation.
It really is. It's not good. Scalia. See, I wish I had the quotes in front of me. I was trying to find them while you were talking, but Scalia was a devout Catholic.
Oh yeah.
And I've got an interview right here where he's talking about how Satan plays a role in our life.
Yeah.
And it's just the thought that someone like that is writing law is insane to me.
Alito's no different.
Right.
He's slightly less slimy just because he's kind of got a polish on him.
Right.
But he believes the exact
Catholic.
Same fucking thing.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
Jesus.
Did you hear about that woman that she paid money to go in and talk to the Supreme Court justices? And
how much did she pay?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
So wait, she paid for the privilege of doing that, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
When was this?
Okay. This is recent.
Okay.
But that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is that she went up and she was kind of like talking to them, trying to get them to say things. And kind of like it was gotcha journalism.
Baiting them?
A little bit. And she recorded it. And this just came out like in the past week.
So did they know she was recording it?
They did not. And Alito basically said, "Yeah, we need to get the country back to a godly place." So this piece of shit is a fucking theocrat, like an obvious theocrat. Now Roberts, he said, "No, like I'm here just to interpret the law. Right. I'm not here. We're not here as a culture warrior or anything like that.
We're only here to."
He kind of mitigated it, and fine. But he's lost fucking control of the court.
Right.
Because you've got fucking the other four.
Kavanaugh, Thomas.
Fucking Justice Ruckus.
Oh, God,
Amy Coney Barrett, who's fucking Handmaid's Tale fucking made real. Like, yeah, it's like Gorsuch. Yuck. Those motherfuckers, dude. So, I mean, it's stacked. Yeah. So I don't know. And one of the things that I heard recently is that there's a real chance that the next president's going to be appointing at least 2 or 3 more justices. So
obviously that makes this presidency even more important.
So fucking important. And and I hadn't thought about that because, Alito, he's getting there. Clarence isn't going to leave until he's fucking dead.
No.
Gorsuch, he's still fairly young.
Right.
But Alito and Roberts,
right.
They might go.
Well, we're recording this in June. I'm just going to make an appeal to all of you. Go out and vote, please. Please go out and vote.
Yeah, vote. Whatever way. Just fucking vote.
Oh, by the way, I do have more respect for a Republican that votes than a Democrat that doesn't vote and complains about it. Because at least that guy's going out and exercising his free speech, or, exercising his right to vote.
His right to vote.
And, I know Democrats, especially younger people, I think are not really excited to vote for Biden, and I understand. The first thing I would urge you to do is look at Biden's record for the last 4 years.
It's been
because there's a lot of things that are basically pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not talking about supporting Israel. I mean, this is again, no one.
That's a different conversation.
I don't think the biggest Biden supporter would say he's the ideal candidate.
No.
But just like 4 years ago, we need to keep the mean babysitter out of the White House. Just get Grandpa to shepherd us through to a better candidate.
Yeah.
We're talking about putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding democracy right now. Do I wish there was a 3-party system or a 5-party system? Do I wish that campaign finance reform would allow far more candidates into this pool? Yes. That's not happening now.
Yeah.
Don't vote for the fucking Green Party. I'm sorry. And I know in California it doesn't necessarily make a difference at all. But, vote for the sane person. 4 years from now, we can vote for a younger socialist or someone else that I think is more ideally our kind of guy or lady, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're just fucking crammed where we are, man. This is all we got.
And
you know what? The thing about fucking them talking shit about Biden's age, fuck that. That old fat fuck.
Have you seen
Orange Monster is older than shit.
Oh, and not only that, have you seen him lately? These past few days, there's some bizarre video of him
the shark
stammering through short press conferences where he can barely get a thought out.
He can't talk.
There's a picture I just saw on Twitter of someone holding his hand as he walks along the stage because he can't balance. Just this notion that Biden's an old man and that Trump's a young, spry warrior is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Biden's in far better shape.
They're both fucking old, but Biden's got a better handle on it. And
well, I'll tell you what, put them both in a fist fight, and who do you think is going to win?
Uncle Joe
Biden will
fucking
knock
kick
that
his
guy
ass,
out,
dude.
man. Come on, man. It's not even going to be close.
Dude, that fucking cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger will take one fucking swing and fall over on his face. So I have quite a few more notes.
Let's go.
We haven't really talked about Brett Kavanaugh that much.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the Brett Kavanaugh trial, and I was the good news is Doug Lyman, the filmmaker Doug Lyman, has a new documentary about Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
So it's not that there are hundreds of new revelations, but they really are trying to dig into the Kavanaugh hearings and basically, kind of dig up more evidence against Kavanaugh. And it's like, I find it interesting. I remember at the time that Kavanaugh hearings were happening, and the term "boys will be boys" was said out loud.
Yeah.
And first of all, I think any parent that's raised a good son would say that's fucking insane.
Yeah.
Young men do get roped into doing bad things. So, I mean, for example, that's right. The Army and war has seen many stories of young men that have participated in horrible, violent acts. Boys that were good, young men that were good, but, they get into this group think and it's suddenly, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about these frat parties where Kavanaugh would attend. And of course, there was some bad behavior. But I'll tell you this right now, and I'm not even saying I'd bet $100. I'd bet my life savings and my life that my son would not participate in something like that and would say, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
So this notion that Kavanaugh was 17 and therefore it's just boys will boys, fuck that. Boys are good innately, and that comes from parenting. Not saying no good boys ever done something bad. That can happen. Of course that can happen.
For sure.
But I just think good parents that love their sons and raise them to treat women well would reject that in a heartbeat.
Well, I think that saying boys will be boys when he's 17 is one thing. Excusing that behavior and not saying, you know what, I fucked up. Like he just straight up said, well, that was then. It's like it wasn't. There was no fucking.
Right. If there were some recalcitrants, right?
Right.
If he just said, you know what, women shouldn't be treated that way.
Right. I made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just admitting his mistake is not really a thing that Americans do very well. You need some help over there?
I'm sorry.
But no, just admitting his mistake is not something Americans can do very well. Right, just saying I was wrong is not a thing.
I wouldn't even put that on Americans. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, you're saying it's human?
I'm saying, a homie should have fucking just copped to it. It would have just been like don't be.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
If he'd admitted to it, we'd go, well, you know what? At least he's saying it was the wrong thing to do.
Right, and I don't want to shove that on Americans because I do think that it's a universal way to respond to these kinds of accusations, but. For somebody that's supposed to be one of a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court of America, the United States of America should have at least an idea of shame. These people have no fucking shame.
No.
They don't give a fuck.
No, it's tragic.
And for him to say boys will be boys is just like trying to shuffle that shit under the rug.
Where is your growth is my question.
Exactly.
Right?
Like show some growth.
Yeah.
Right. That like if he'd even implied that he felt like some sort of shame about that, even at the time, would have implied that he had grown. He had learned something from this fucking stupid shit that he did.
But apparently he didn't. So,
but he obviously didn't. Look at that. I like beer. Yeah, fucking guy, dude.
so how well do you remember the Clarence Thomas hearings? Because I remember them pretty vividly.
I mean, I remember him pretty good. I remember how horribly he treated
Anita Hill.
Anita.
Yeah. So Anita Hill testified against Clarence Thomas, was vilified for it. It's pretty clear to me he sexually harassed her. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
What's this pubic hair doing on my Coke can? Yeah. What the fuck?
What are you doing?
Is she going to make that up? That's like the fucking weirdest thing to try and say, oh, you're making that shit up. Oh, man. That fucking whole thing heated me up.
That's a very specific thing to make up, right? And what's interesting to me, that is the sign of a narcissist. To do something that bizarre and think, oh, this is a great idea, right? Like, you know, and I wasn't able to research this that well, but is Clarence Thomas the biggest disaster ever for a Supreme Court judge? Because boy, so. The evidence against Thomas and his piece of shit wife is a mountain of evidence.
He didn't say anything for like 10 years.
About his wife, you mean?
No, from the bench.
Who is a right-wing radical, by the way.
She's a nut job. Yeah, but he's a fucking moron.
Right.
Like he's only started talking in the past 2 or 3 years.
Right.
He never asked any questions.
You mean to his wife?
No, to the fucking people in court.
Oh, are you saying he's mostly silent during these proceedings?
Yes, he doesn't ask questions.
How did you discover that?
It's in the record. I mean, okay. I've read articles about him.
So he rarely actually raises his voice and asks a question.
He didn't ask questions for years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically Scalia's lackey, right? Wasn't he Scalia's butt boy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a call about that.
By the way. That was homophobic. I take that back. But I mean, I guess he was, a sycophant for Scalia. I think I'm
absolutely.
Saying that right.
No, he was definitely. I mean, he's one of the originalists. I mean, he is one of the people that's so far up the originalist fucking ass,
right,
that he is against Brown v. Board of Education. He wants to go back and turn back the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
How does he feel about interracial marriage?
Well, if it's him, it's cool. But if it's other people, it ain't.
I would love to talk to a person of color about this, because it just feels to me that, for capitalism to work and for systemic racism to work, you really need people of color to lead the charge. It's like, I don't know that capitalism and racism works without structures of power that engulf people of color as well. Because black people that vote for Trump and stump for Trump, and black people that help uphold these systems, I feel like it's an integral part of systemic racism to me. Dead silence.
No, so I'm trying to think. So
I don't know. I mean, it just feels like it's a major function of systemic racism.
I think that this is probably not the best term to use.
Right.
But are you saying that without Uncle Tom's, capitalism wouldn't work?
No, just that that people of color that put forth these racist agendas makes it that much harder to defeat, because it makes it relatable. I don't know, I guess
because it gives white people an excuse to say that that's okay.
It allows all kinds of things, right? Tokenism. Right. I mean, it's allowing. I don't know. I guess I asked the question. I don't know if that's controversial or not. So
yeah, no. It's an interesting point. I don't know if it's totally necessary.
Right.
I think that probably in modern day, it's necessary to some reason. It's to some extent. I mean, you got people like fucking, dude.
This week. Okay,
Candace Owens, dude.
This week, Trump is stumping in Detroit and attended a church that he claimed to be a black church.
Yeah.
If you look through the video, it's almost all white people.
It was a black church, but none of them would go.
No. And the people that claim to be blacks for Trump aren't even from Detroit, and they're not members of that church. So, I mean, at this very moment, people like Trump are using people of color to stump and to basically say, see, I like black people too. Some of my best friends are black.
Some of my best friends are black. Absolutely. No,
it just feels like an important tool.
Well, you got the people like fucking Candace Owens and Diamond and Silk. These motherfuckers.
What's Diamond and Silk?
It's these two black ladies that are just all up Trump's ass.
Okay.
I mean, do you know who Candace Owens is?
Yeah, definitely.
So, basically they're
she's a host of a TV show, I think, right?
Well, so she started out. So she's got an interesting backstory. She's pure grift.
Uh-huh.
Pure grift. She started out as she was writing papers and stuff, talking shit about the Republicans.
Oh,
and then
so anti-Republican stuff.
Anti-Republican
Okay.
stuff. And then at some point, she wrote something that was pro-Republican, and she got tons of fucking feedback. Tons of people were like, "Oh, you know, that's."
So suddenly she got some heat when she started writing pro-Republican.
So then she realized, okay, this is my jam.
So she's the female black Jordan Peterson. She got some heat
Yes.
by talking about the right hot button topics and suddenly realized she can make some money out of this.
She's fucking everywhere now. And then she came out with the whole Blexit bullshit.
Remind me with Blexit.
So that was the black exit from the Democratic Party she was trying to promote. I mean, she's pure grift, dude. Pure
black
grift.
should leave the Democratic Party because Democrats don't care about them.
Right. Blexit.
Oh, because Republicans love them some black people. Right.
Well, like we're saying, they love some of them because they're their best friends, right?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Like of old. Yeah, boy, I did not enjoy reading about Jeannie Thomas, man. Clarence Thomas's wife. So
that fucking broad.
We were talking about the mountain of evidence against Clarence Thomas. I mean, Koch network summits. Thomas attended at least 2 donor summits for the Koch network, the right-wing organization, and participated in a dinner with high-level donors without disclosing his appearance.
Yeah.
He's received money to pay off an RV.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah, his wife.
Harlan Crow.
His wife wasn't at the January 6th riot, but like, I don't know, earlier that day was at one of the functions.
So what she did was as soon as the January 6th thing happened, she was on the fucking horn texting Mark Meadows.
Texting Trump staffers, basically.
Yeah, Mark Meadows.
Yeah.
And trying to give him advice on how to turn it over. Like, she's a fucking awful person, dude.
She's an awful person. And I love every time Thomas is asked about this, he's all, that's just my wife. I mean, slow this down and talk about marriage. You know, you and your wife might not agree on a band that you want to go see.
Yeah, right.
You may not agree, like, I want Mexican, you want Italian tonight. But the notion that Jeannie Thomas is a right-wing horrific piece of shit and that Clarence Thomas is impartial. Is hilarious.
Yeah, right.
Right. The notion that he radically disagrees with all these things is insane.
He's completely impartial and reliable to put down a fucking judgment that takes all the facts into consideration.
My wife is an insurrectionist, but I'm not.
But that's just my wife.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Alito's doing the same thing to his wife, and she sounds like a real fucking piece of work, too.
Is that right?
So I mean, she was the one that flew the flags.
Right. Alito's wife flew the flags on January 6th, and she was in a feud with a next-door neighbor, I think, about that, right?
Well, there's 2 different sides to that story.
Okay.
There's definitely 2 sides to that story. And I tend to believe not her.
The hateful moron, it doesn't have much credibility in my book.
She's a fucking nut job. She got sidled up to by that woman that went to the Supreme Court thing too. She
did?
She talked to her too. I'll have to get the name of that.
I would love to see that. Yeah.
Because like I'm assuming that there's going to be either a book or a movie.
No, I actually, you telling me that's the first time I've heard of that, so I would be interested in learning more about that.
Yeah, I got all kinds of respect for this lady.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I guess recording someone without their consent is illegal, though, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, it depends on the state.
Yeah. And the situation.
Right.
On phones, it's different than in person.
Yes. Video is different than audio and video. I know that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if there's any legal challenges to what she did. So,
I mean, she could get in trouble, but it doesn't take it away.
Right. One of the things we have to talk about before we go, I'm not saying we're wrapping it up, but we definitely have to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a hero to many, and for good reason, right? A champion of women's rights. Ginsburg's decision to not step down during the Obama administration looms large in the estimations of some of her admirers, who see it as enabling the destruction of large parts of Ginsburg's legacy. So there's a Stanford law professor who basically says that by sticking around, Ginsburg undid all the important work she did for women's rights. And that's a pretty powerful statement.
I do kind of agree with that.
But so obviously RBG, sorry, my bad. RBG, very, very important figure for women. I get it. To be admired, certainly for several decades. But here's the thing. A woman in her 80s, if I'm saying that right, with cancer, decided to stay on the court just because she thought her health was good enough where she would be fine.
It's pure ego, dude.
It's ego. It is hubris. And,
just same note. I'm continuing on with this, but this ACLU timeline of major Supreme Court decisions on women's rights, like 2/3 of the cases that are in here feature Ginsburg on some level or another, either arguing in front of the court, submitting amicus briefs, or making the decisions. Like fully 2/3 of the fucking the cases here.
So she had her hand in a lot of very important decisions.
She made women's lives better in America.
Yes, of course she did.
But she definitely made it possible for all those decisions to be reversed by not stepping down at a reasonable time. And I like, there was a point there where I was like, please don't die. Please don't die. Please don't die. And then she fucking died. And it's like, well, you know what? You fucked everybody by making
it
that
wasn't
decision.
good. And, if you remember, who's it? Arizona's former governor and presidential candidate, John McCain, basically got out of a hospital bed with, I believe, cancer to vote for the Obamacare Act, right?
That's right.
He was one of the swing votes that did that. Now, God bless him for doing that, right? I think he saved potentially millions of lives over the next few years.
Yeah.
But that's the exception to the rule, right? The idea that you can at an advanced age just hang on long enough. It's, I've always said too, like, I know, I'll just make a sports analogy. People who say that guy is old, he should retire. Oh, fuck you, right? Like, that guy loves what he's doing, or lady love what they're doing, and you're going to tell them to stop doing what they're doing? No, they're 35. Let them make the decision when they want to retire. That's something they love. They have a right to do it. That's not the case for an 80-year-old or an 85-year-old.
And making the decision to stay in sports is not control over women's lives,
and it's affecting yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you
fucking get more CTE,
the worst thing that happens, or
right?
exactly, or you suck,
right? or you lose. But losing a fucking game doesn't fucking matter, like what she did.
God bless her. God bless her accomplishments. She was a beacon of light for women's rights, but
truly,
she blew it.
Truly, 2/3 of those decisions on that ACL sheet feature her in some way or another, and that is amazing.
It is,
but she just flushed it all.
She really did.
Oh man,
I'm sorry. I'm kind of running out of steam here.
No, it's okay.
I've gone through a lot of my notes. Do you have some more notes to talk about?
No, I mean, I think I've gotten it. I mean, just that everything leads back. Everything that's being reversed now is due to this Federalist Society and the originalist idea, which is pure fucking bullshit. It's a theocratic takeover of America in slow motion,
and it's clearly working.
It's working. I mean, what are we going to do?
The wife and I have entertained leaving the country if Trump gets reelected. And I mean, when's the last time you had that thought in your head? I mean, I understand this country has gone through decades and decades, and obviously hundreds of years of strife and all that stuff. But I mean, boy, just the thought that this could get worse. It could get a lot worse
next year, depending on what goes on.
Yeah.
That's where we'll find out.
I mean, Steve Bannon has said out loud that if Trump gets reelected, he will prosecute many of his enemies.
See, Bannon is a fucking evil man.
He is.
But the thing I like about Bannon
is
that he's fucking honest.
He's saying that's true. He's saying the truth out loud right there.
There was this Atlantic conference that he was supposed to speak at.
Yeah.
And I was like, fucking cool, man.
Right.
We'll get to hear the real fucking deal.
Uh-huh.
And all these stupid fucking lib crackers, dude, they just they complained and they got him kicked off. But he's the guy you want to fucking hear, man, because he will tell you the fucking truth.
So
he doesn't give
slow
a
it down. He was going to speak at a Democratic function.
So no, the Atlantic, the newspaper or the magazine. Yeah. So there was an Atlantic convention or fucking whatever, and he was slated to be on stage,
a speaker,
speaking in conversation with somebody, and everybody fucking got their panties in a goddamn knot and fucking they got him kicked out.
Okay,
and I was like, that's the dumbest fucking thing you could possibly do.
So they shouted him down.
I mean, they got him
what
out.
I'm saying is they shouted down the notion that he would even be there.
Yeah. Why are you platforming him? Because the motherfucker will tell you the truth. He's the only one that'll tell you the truth. None of these other ass. Mike Johnson won't tell you the fucking truth. Mitch McConnell won't tell you the fucking truth. None of these people will. Steve Bannon, doesn't matter how fucking bad it is, he will tell you the fucking truth.
Well, the one thing I'll say in favor of all these horrific people is they've been telling us the truth all along. Meaning, there is subterfuge in this agenda, right? But when Obama took office, Mitch McConnell said out loud, not in a private room, we will fight him on every issue.
Yeah.
We will destroy his presidency. Essentially, words of treason.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
And he said it out loud and no one gives a shit. And it's like, to me, as far as the truth goes, the truth hurts. But I mean, the funny thing is most of these people say outwards, I don't like black people or I don't like gay people.
Yeah.
And it's like, there used to be a time where these used to be hidden.
Right.
Not anymore.
Right. No,
you can just say whatever you want and
Yeah.
no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Nazi party.
To quote Mel Brooks.
I think you have an asshole of the week. Now, usually I do the asshole of the week, but I think today you have an asshole of the week.
I don't really have, I can't really go into how, I didn't do enough research to do it, but I'm just going to nominate fucking Antonin Scalia
Aha!
as the asshole of the week.
Asshole of the week.
What a lucky coincidence that we're talking about the Supreme Court.
I just figured, I was going through it and I'm like, he was the first Federalist Society originalist motherfucker to get into a real position of power.
Right.
That and fuck him and everything he did. And God bless RBG, but fuck her for having a beer with that piece of shit.
Was there a famous photo of those two together taking a beer?
No. She said that he was one of her best friends.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I had a real fucking hard time with that. He fought everything that she did.
Yeah.
Like how
I'm gonna guess
she
she respected his brain, right? His intellect.
But he's
I don't
dumb
know.
as shit.
Is
dude.
he dumb?
These are not serious people. Like he's got an agenda and he's making everything fit that agenda.
Right.
So he's clever.
Right.
I don't think that he's smart.
He presided. I'm sure he presided over Bush v. Gore, right? The 2008 Bush v. Gore.
Yes, he would have been there.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that yet. I know we might have mentioned it briefly, but let's slow that down here. 8 people decided an election.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about originalists. What do you think the founding fathers would think about 8 people deciding a democratic election?
See,
they would burn the place to the ground and say, time to start over.
Right.
Right.
See, and that's what I mean. Like when the originalist idea doesn't work for them, they don't eat air.
Right.
They are completely unserious.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's
And Antonin Scalia.
Yeah.
He was the beginning of that problem. I mean, there was bad people on the Supreme Court before that, but he was the worst piece of shit.
And had a lot of sway,
Clarence.
obviously, a lot of influence.
He did.
He wasn't just a bad dude. I think people really looked up to him. Clarence Thomas looked up to him. I think several of the younger justices looked up to him.
All these right wing Federalist Society originalists.
Yeah.
He's their fucking guy.
Yeah. Terrible role model. Awful person.
We didn't solve shit.
We didn't solve anything today. Fuck this show. We're just going to quit. Yeah, the
That's
podcast is
fucking
over. You just heard the loud podcast.
That's it. Fuck this.
But I do have a couple quotes. We have got Quotation Corner.
Okay.
We talk about, quotes that aren't related to what we talked about today, but I like to say them because they're kind of things that we talk about.
Yeah.
The first one's by Harlan Ellison. He said, "You're not entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to your informed opinion. No one is entitled to be ignorant."
Yeah. That's
pretty good.
Damn straight.
Kind of get behind that. That's pretty good.
I mean, I think that it definitely falls into what we do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, somewhat related. Neil Brennan he's a comedian. He wrote Chappelle's Show with Dave Chappelle.
Okay.
One of the creative forces behind that. And I always love this quote. It says, "White women are the white men of women." So he said something similar, which is white women are the worst thing since white men.
That's so good.
So, and again, to parse it out, women obviously sway several elections, and white women are the reason that Trump got elected.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously white men voted for Trump, but if white women don't vote for Trump, he doesn't win.
Yeah.
So
how do you think that's going to go this year? I'm curious.
I mean, they say that with independent voters, that these 34 felony convictions will hurt Trump.
I just read a poll that actually is making it like a pretty big impact. 20 something% of independent voters
Right.
decided that actually means something.
I was always like, I could never understand independent. They would show independent voters being interviewed. And it's like this, people there are people that voted for Obama and then Trump actually kind of blows my mind.
People have said that. I'm like, I don't know if I believe that.
Rob Schneider.
Did he?
We're going to talk about it. We'll talk about it next week. He'll be my asshole next week.
Right.
But yeah, apparently he considered himself a liberal and then voted for Trump recently. So
does he have brain damage?
That's the thing. How often does brain damage affect?
I think
you said
it
Kevin
means a
Sorbo
lot.
got in an accident.
He had like a serious fucking accident.
So
he's fucked up. And there was somebody else that had the same thing.
Yeah,
I think Gary Busey or somebody like that.
That's right. I don't know. Is he Republican though, or he's just kind of wacky?
You know what?
I think he's just kind of wacky, right?
He's more than wacky.
Oh, okay.
He's a fucking nut job.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Maybe a head injury as well.
I'm sure he had a head injury.
I have one more quote. It's actually not even remotely related to anything I've said for the last hour, but I just like this quote. This is Kurt Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut was just a wonderful writer.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of seeing him speak, and he was so funny. And I loved him.
Did you really?
Yeah, he and Tom Wolfe on separate occasions in the same year both spoke at the local university over there, and boy, I liked him so much. He was so great. This is more related to art and culture, but he said, I say in speeches that a plausible mission of artists is to make people appreciate being alive at least a little bit. I'm then asked if I know any artists who pulled that off, and I reply the Beatles did. Now, I would cast that net a lot further. We were talking about shitty art last week. Hate Grateful Dead, but God, if you love the Grateful Dead, God bless you, and I hope it gives you comfort and joy. I'm a big Beatles fan, but I would cast that net much wider than that. I think, even kind of average to mediocre art, there's plenty of people to audience for that and to enjoy it and to feel better as a result of it.
Well, I think, like we were talking about last week, it's the same thing. You don't have to be a good artist to get across an artistic point.
And a human point.
Right.
Yes.
And that is ultimately a human point.
Right.
And I think I totally agree. Like that bringing a little bit of happiness into the world is the job of art.
You know that Banksy quote, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I always thought was great. But obviously as you get exposed to art, having listened to a lot of music, there's stuff that you might enjoy that I won't, but again, don't care. Just don't even care a little bit.
Yeah.
If that artist is writing the most trite cliche things, but it means something to you, great.
Yeah. Power to you. If you get something from it, great. Absolutely. It's like that I know we've all been in this situation where you hear the fucking band and you're like this, oh my God, this is the most amazing fucking thing. And then you play it for your friend and you're like, huh? And they're like, yeah.
I was at a friend's house once and so I'd never heard Maroon 5, but I'm at a friend's house, there's a party going on and they're playing a Maroon 5 cover of an AC/DC song. So I'm not even sure I want to hear AC/DC again. I've had enough of that, but I definitely don't care about a Maroon 5 cover of an AC/DC song. Yeah. Anyway, I joke about having Tourette's, but this music is playing and it's so awful that I just involuntarily said really loudly, will someone turn that fucking shit off? Of course, the hostess of the party heard me say that and did turn it off. I felt terrible. Yeah, the record scratch. In retrospect, I would have apologized. I don't think I was, 25 years ago, smart enough to know what to do. I was probably mortified that I hurt her feelings, but anyway. All right, brother.
We
what
good?
Do you think?
We got this?
I know we didn't solve the
shit.
issues, but we talked about it. So
yeah.
Until next week.
Yeah, fucking A, man.
Take care.
Rock on. You have been listening to The Trivial Man. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can either call us at 415-484-8841 or send us an email at thetriviumpod@gmail.com.